Hi, my name's Gabriel. I'm a guitar teacher at the New York City Guitar School. I'm here today to talk to you about the one secret that will unlock all of music for you and how you can use that to play anything on the guitar. That one secret is reading music. For me, reading music is often the biggest musical hurdle that guitarists face, and unlike other instruments, where guitarists typically start off reading tab and using fretboard diagrams, and we don't really dive into notation until we're further along in our playing. I found that for myself, it put me at a disadvantage, especially when I began working professionally, as other instrumentalists were just far more fluent reading notation just purely because they spent more time using it. So I think it would be useful to start off by talking about my own personal experience with reading music. So here comes a story. So towards the end of high school, I'd been playing guitar for around 7 years, and by that point I was fairly proficient. And that particular year, the high school decided to put on a production of the musical Children of Eden by Stephen Schwartz, and they decided, rather than hiring in all professional musicians like they usually did, they would use some of the students to perform the music. Having at that point never played a musical production, I didn't realise the music for the show wasn't going to be written in tablature, and cue the most difficult and stressful musical week of my life. After this earlier failure, I decided I wanted to dedicate more time towards learning how to read music, and to do so I spent quite a lot of time working on exercises, going through like sight reading books and guides, and it got me pretty far. Like, I could read music okay, it was fine. I thought I was pretty good at it. Until I reached music college. Week 2 of music college. I was studying my Bachelor of Music and Jazz at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland. We had to do a history of music ensemble in the first couple of years of studying. What we would do is we would play the music of the jazz greats in a band setting, and we would try and recreate the vibe and sound of the record. This particular week, the teacher who was running the course decided to pull out the John Coltrane Omnibook, which was cool. That was great because the Omnibook is, a plethora of information. However, he then proceeded to count off the music and expected us all to play in unison the saxophone solo to Bye Bye Blackbird. It didn't go well. I couldn't do it at all. And it cued somewhat of a Whiplash-esque exchange where I was basically told, unless I could read music properly, I'll never be a professional musician. That kind of thing's gonna sting a little, and obviously I wanted to prove him wrong, so fast forward to graduation day. I wasn't there. I wasn't in attendance at graduation day because I'd already booked my first professional job. I was playing the show Grease, and I got that job because I could read music. So how did I get to that point where I was being hired because I could read music, and 4 years earlier I was told I would never be a professional musician? The main thing I did is I changed my approach to practicing reading music, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to give you a primer of how you can go from never reading a dot before to being a flying fluent sight reader. So the first thing I did, classical repertoire is amazing for this. You can go any instrument, any of the great composers. It's just a wide and very broad range of material you can draw from. In particular, I loved etudes by Bach, and playing through things such as the violin sonatas and partitas, and practicing these to a metronome. I started off with just 4 bars at a time, trying to reduce the information, and eventually building my way up to working on entire pieces of music. The next thing that I started to do was to look for transcriptions of pieces of music. So I would use things like the Charlie Parker Omnibook, or just transcriptions I would find online that people had done, and I would play those along to the record really slowly, trying to see how I could mimic the articulation and the flow of the music just by following a written notation. What I found was through regular practice in this way, my fluency began to increase, and eventually I could just read music off the page and it would sound like music. So what's step 1? How can you start learning how to read music? The first thing you need to do, you gotta learn the notes on the fretboard. That's the most important thing, and you'll find so much of music will be unlocked just by improving your fretboard knowledge. I'm going to put a diagram up now, and you'll be able to see the notes in the first 5 frets across all 6 strings. Now I say the first 5 frets because really that's the key. If you memorize those 5 frets on each string, you'll see that there's repetition across the rest of the strings. So now what I'm going to put on the screen now is the first 5 notes on the first string and how they're shadowed on the second string. I'm going to follow this with the second and the third string, third and the fourth string, fourth and the fifth string, and finally the fifth and the sixth string. So you can see once you have that first position down, they just move up the neck. And that's really, really powerful because then you can really start to limit the amount of movement when it comes to reading music that way. Now, the next thing, the actual stave and how to read it. So the first thing to take into account is the clef. The clef, I'm going to put a picture on the screen now. This is a picture of the treble clef. Most music written for guitar is written using this symbol, and other instruments use the same symbol, and basically if you see this, it means that the lines are set to certain particular notes. The curve, the start of the clef, the center is the G note, so sometimes people refer to it as a G clef also. The next thing, you got to be able to find the notes on the stave. So for me, I always found the best way to do it is to find the patterns. Now, first of all, if we take the stave and we look at the spaces on the set stave, we can see we have the notes F, A, C, and E. Face. So we can see those spaces there. Now, this repeats throughout the stave, so this is really useful for helping with the next thing, which are ledger lines. Now, ledger lines are when we need to extend above or below the stave because we just don't have enough space, enough real estate to write the music we need. So we're going to add some extra lines, and what you'll see is again face is going to repeat. So if we go to the top of the stave first, where we have the note F, we're going to have F, the next line is going to be A, the line after that is C, the line after that is E, so we have the face there. And finally, the last one, we can go to the bottom, below the stave. The final line of the stave, the lowest line of the stave is E, and we're going to work retroactively, so we're going to go E, below that the line is C, below that we have A, and below that we have F, so face. So we can see face 3 times on the stave, and I use that as kind of like my roadmap around so I can kind of see where I'm going. And also, if you think about it, the spaces are always going to be the next note. So between F and A, you have a G, but between A and C, you have B. So that's kind of the way I negotiate my way across reading the stave. Lastly, in terms of learning the notes, the most important thing to know is where the open strings fall in the stave. Because that's going to be kind of your guideline to where we're going to be playing these sections. I'm going to put them on the screen now, and you'll be able to see where all 6 strings are going to fall on the stave. Okay, so that's the notes. What about the rhythm? How do we play that? I'm going to put a diagram again on the screen now, and this is going to be, I call it like a rhythm tree, and it's how we can divide up different notes. Notes typically referred to as fractions, and that is because the next thing we're going to talk about is a time signature. So if we look at this diagram on the screen of the different note values, we can see that we have a whole note, we have a half note, we have a quarter note, we have an eighth note, and a 16th note. They're all fractions of a whole, and a whole is a measure of music. Now, typically in Western and popular music, we'll be playing in something called 4/4 time. That's going to look like this. And 4/4 time, what that means is that we have 4 quarter notes in one measure. Now, measure is the space, but they have the lines, the little block. You'll see those throughout stave. So we have 4 quarter notes, or 2 whole notes, or 1 whole note to make up one measure of music. We can also have different time signatures. So for example, we could have 3/4, and what that would mean is that we have 3 quarter notes. We can also have, we don't have to have it over 4, we have something like 6/8, and that means we have 6/8 notes. And these are all just different ways of communicating how the rhythms are written on the stave. Finally, the last consideration we have is key signatures and accidentals. Now what that means, you'll see these little, people call them hashtags nowadays, or like sharp symbols, or these tiny B's, which are flat symbols. Now a sharp symbol means that we're going to take one note and we're going to move it up half a step, and flat is going to be down half a step. Sometimes when you're playing a piece of music and it's in a particular key, that means that it's based on a particular scale. You'll see at the start of the music there'll be what we call a key signature, where you'll have like a certain number of sharps or flats, and that will just tell you that whenever you see, for example, like an F, it's always going to be an F sharp throughout the piece unless we have what we call an accidental. An accidental is just when we have a sharp or flat that's not in the key signature, that's used later on in the music. That's really common in classical music and jazz music, really any popular music. So now we know how the stave works, we're going to have a look at how we can play it. So I'm going to use an etude from Kreutz's Violin Studies. It's 40 etudes. This is from etude number 2. I'm going to look at just the first 4 bars of the music. Like how I explained earlier, how I used to practice these, I would just take 4 bars at a time and just repeat it until I really got it down. I'm going to put on the screen the music, and I'm also going to show you how you can fret it on the guitar. Awesome! So finally, the last thing I want to talk about today is the resources you can use going forwards to practice this for yourself. So one place that I love to use is a website called imslp.com, and what that is, it's a database. It's kind of like the Wikipedia of classical music. So that all this music's out of copyright, so you can really just look at all of the great composers like Beethoven, Bach. There's great studies like by Kreutzer, who I really like. You can even look at classical guitar things by like Fernando Sor, that kind of thing. It's all going to be like a gold mine of notation that you can dig into and start learning to practice. Other place that I really like to practice from, my personal favourite, it's the trusty old Charlie Parker Omnibook. It's a great resource for jazz vocabulary and learning how to read like fast articulations, but really just dive into trying to find different sources, and you'll find it so rewarding. Reading music opens up the whole of music to you because you don't have to play music just for guitar. This is for saxophones. Kreutz's Violin Studies are a great source. You can look at flute studies, anything really that has a treble clef. It's going to be so much fun. Okay, the final takeaways. For sight reading music, I always find that playing real music is far more rewarding than playing exercises. For me, exercises are more about developing technique, and I feel if I try and use it to practice reading music, all I end up doing is getting mentally exhausted and I feel more frustrated. But if you have something as rewarding as a beautiful piece of music at the end of your practice session, you'll want to keep reading more music. It's a really great way to develop this part of your playing. And lastly, just really have fun. Try and find the music that you love. You'll find new music that you never thought you were going to listen to. I've found so many great classical composers that I really enjoyed, and it really broadened my musical horizons past what I'd listened to in the past. So again, thank you so much for watching this video. On behalf of myself, Gabriel, and the New York City Guitar School, if you got any questions, leave them in a comment below and I'll get straight back to you. Please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We're going to be bringing more content like this. If there's anything you'd like us to cover, just drop a comment and we'll hopefully make a video about it. So again, thank you, and try and read some music.